So, VK on the beat, check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1197 of Toronto Mic'd. Proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. Electronic Products Recycling Association. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. Ridley Funeral Home. Pillars of the community since 1921. Canna Cabana. The lowest prices on cannabis, guaranteed. Learn more at cannacabana.com. Joining me today, celebrating 30 years of the ongoing history of new music, is Alan Cross and Rob Johnston. Robbie J. Alan, welcome.
Well, thank you for having us in your tiny little basement. I appreciate it.
And you're a tall man, Robbie J. Remind us, what are you, 6'7"? What's going on there?
6'4" when I wear shoes, 6'3" when I don't.
Okay, but neither of you, for the record, did either of you hit your head today?
No, because we've learned our lesson from times past.
Yes, exactly.
Robbie, I was telling Alan, because you're late. Alan was 24 hours early.
Yes.
That's impressive. You know what? My apologies again. I hate being late. And this city is driving me insane.
You're an East York guy?
I'm a 10-minute walk due south of Bingo Bob. I'm beaches, upper beaches, Danforth.
And he works in Kingston, so there's his commute.
Yeah, it's a bitch for him.
It was okay coming in from Oakville today.
Yeah, see, Alan's smart. He's in the West End.
Yeah,
it's no problem.
Yeah.
You had to come across the city. I forgive you, and it's worth the wait. But I do want to dive into it because we don't have unlimited time. But I do want to get to the bottom of Alan being 24 hours early. Did we ever resolve that?
All I can tell you is if it's in my phone, it's the truth. It's reality. And for whatever reason, reality got bent, and I showed up yesterday at 2 minutes after 10 o'clock, panicking because I thought I was late. When It turns out that I was substantially early.
I thought I had a delivery. There's a knock at the door. I'm like, oh, it's another delivery. And then, of course, I see Alan there, and I have that moment of like, did I fuck up? Like, there's that moment of like, did I screw up? But Robbie wasn't here. And then I check my DMs of Robbie J, and I see it is February 1st. Now Robbie's showing Alan.
Yeah, I see it. I don't know how that got into it. Okay, never mind.
So we are going to dive into the 30 years of the ongoing history of new music. I have a whack of questions for you guys. Firstly, congrats on the milestone. You guys should be proud.
No idea how we made it this far. None whatsoever. I like to tell people that it is the radio show that breaks all the rules. This host talks too much, plays a lot of unfamiliar music, and never mentions the name of the radio station in the body of the program. Yet, here we are. I'm at home. What am I writing? Episode 970. No, I finished. No, 977 right now.
Okay.
Yes. We estimate 1,000 in, give it around November.
Mid-November, yeah.
997 puts you exactly 200 behind me. I'm just looking. This is 1197. Of course, not a fair fight, of course. You guys are different.
No, we're 977.
Yeah, 77.
Yeah,
okay.
So we're way behind you, but then, we only do one a week.
Right. And
then we don't do anything during the summer because I need to regenerate.
Well, we realized many years ago when we were doing 45, 50 episodes a year, we thought, this is stupid. Nobody's hearing these. Why are we, what are we doing here? This is insane.
Yeah. So we take the summer off and do a greatest hits thing, which means people coming back from the cottage get to hear these shows probably for the first time.
Right.
Even though they may have run once or twice previously on a regular Sunday night.
Okay, let me get, I'm a big fan of details here. I know I was like, details don't matter. I like the details. I want to go to the very beginning. So, Alan, you're the original host of this program?
Yes, it was assigned to me. Let me make it very clear that I did not want to do this program. I was very happy playing records from 2 until 6 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday to Friday.
Wow. I
had no interest in doing a long-form radio program. However, we had some new owners who thought that, we're not going to flip the radio station to country. We're going to keep this alternative thing that's happening, because we looked around and we saw Pearl Jam and Nirvana and Alice in Chains and Soundgarden and all that. So, we'll keep this. But in order to educate this whack of new listenership that we expect to get, we need a program that's going to put all this music into context. So they looked around, they found one guy on staff with a history degree, me, and they said, you're doing this program. What's it called? They say it's called The Ongoing History of New Music. I say that's a stupid name. Nobody's ever going to be able to get it right, even after 30 years. And what you're going to do is, we're going to sever you. We're going to fire you from your afternoon position, rehire you as a part-timer and an independent contractor. The program will be covered under the independent contract, and then the part-time stuff means that you will be doing Saturday and Sunday mornings from 6 a.m. till noon, which meant that I had no common days off with my wife. And they said, this is your offer, and if you don't want it, we'll give you a nice packaging. We wish you well in your future endeavors. Now, I had just gotten married. I had just moved into my first house, so what was I going to do?
Now, the funny thing, before I forget this, the funny thing, too, was I was doing overnights on the Saturday, Sunday morning, covering Martin at the Phoenix and Deadly Headley from Club Max. And I remember Alan started doing the weekend mornings, and I'm like, what are you doing? He says, they got me doing this stupid idea for this stupid radio show. It's not going to go anywhere.
It's going to fail.
Stupid.
Is it, to be specific, was it Stuart Myers who tapped you on the shoulder and said you're doing this? Okay, because there's a rumor I'm going to get now on the record. Finally, I get to ask this question. Is it true that this was going to be a Bob Makowitz Sr. hosted program? Is there any truth to that rumor? Have you ever heard that one?
No, I've never heard that.
Well, I suppose it would have been we had the studio up there at the time, the Caps studio.
Because Bob was working for McLean Hunter.
I forgot about that studio.
I can't remember what CAP stands for.
Neither can I. Yeah.
It was across in the washrooms. That's all I remember.
Yeah.
And it had the CD burner in it.
Okay, the rumor I heard is at this time, this is McLean Hunter that owns CFNY at this time, right? And Bob was working for McLean Hunter at this time. And there is a rumor, no one really cares about these rumors except me, but that Bob Mako Sr. was going to be the host of The Ongoing History of New Music, and then Stuart Myers assigned it to you, Alan Cross, for CFNY.
That's first I've heard of it.
Okay.
Honestly,
well, you know what? When we do the Edge documentary, we can research that one.
Yeah.
Can I drain my CFN? Oh, the Edge dog. I see what you mean. Because the CFNY doc I'm going to ask about, it ends around, I think I was chatting with Alan earlier, but like 1992-ish. Okay. So it's everything up to 1992, and this is an opportunity for the listenership here to get a thorough, and I know you posted something on your blog, which was great, but we're going to get a little more info about the CFNY doc. Humble and Fred, a couple of guys I work with today, gave me kind of a nice story about, being interviewed by you at the Elmo for this documentary. So where exactly is the CFNY doc at? And then while you're answering that, I want to know who's paying for this thing.
We have a production company based here in Toronto, and they have given us a very nice budget. Most of that budget is going to go to music clearances, because you can't do a documentary like this without having...
How soon is now?
We don't know. We don't know what music we need. We need a ton of Canadian stuff. We need a ton of U.S. stuff. We need a ton of British stuff.
Right.
And we're going to put together a wish list of what we want, and then go to a music clearance person, who is one of our producers, by the way, and going to try and find out exactly how much this is going to cost us. But it's going to be a lot.
Right.
So anyway, we have this this production company, this good budget. We have done, I think, 8 or 9 days at the Elmo Combo with local interviews. I just got back from a tour through San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Las Vegas, where we were doing more interviews. Part of the crew right now is in Vancouver doing some more interviews. And then on the 13th of February, we've got 5 days of interviews in the UK. London, Glasgow, Manchester, Liverpool. So you can see that we're pretty serious about this.
Yeah.
And we've got some really good guests so far. For example, we went to Bruce Coburn's house. We talked to Merck Mercuriadis, who is the guy buying up all those catalogs for the Hypnosis Song Fund. We were at his house the day after he bought the Justin Bieber catalog for $200 million.
Wow.
We talked to Lol Tolhurst, drummer of The Cure, drummer and keyboardist of The Cure. We've got Peter Hook from New Order coming up, Jim and Charlie from Simple Minds, one of the guys from OMD, and a lot of other artists that we want to get from that area. I'm working on Depeche Mode very hard. We're trying to get Jerry Harrison or somebody from the Talking Heads. So we're trying to make this a definitive story of CFNY during the Spirit of Radio years, which runs 1977 to, like you said, 1992-ish. So the David Marsden era, and back then with all those the freeform era of CFNY, and we want to document some of the things that we did, some of the things that we managed to influence, and some of the repercussions that still linger today from that period of Canadian radio.
So Chorus is not paying for this?
Nope. No. They did give us permission to do it because...
So they blessed it.
It is their intellectual property.
All right, big question, Alan Cross. Does Chorus have to bless the final product?
I'm not sure. I don't think so. Because this isn't going to be anything critical. This is a
celebration.
It's a love-in.
It's a love letter.
Right.
We're not going to apologize for that.
Right.
So it is going to be a loving look back to a time in Toronto radio that will never be repeated.
Robbie J wants to know if Bono is going to be interviewed for this project.
I did what? Sorry?
Bono?
Who's Bono?
Oh, Bono.
Oh, that guy.
Bono.
Oh, that guy.
Bono.
We're trying.
We're
trying.
Last name basis. All right, now you talked a lot about the great musicians that'll be a part of this, but I'm going to get back to the talent that we heard on the radio, like yourself. So, firstly, did you interview yourself? Like, how did that work? You just
there's no narrator for this. Generally, most of the interviews will be conducted by me off camera.
Okay.
Where I can't be conducted, the director or the assistant director will do it, or Scott Turner will do it.
Very good.
But for the most part, it's been me, and
you're doing the heavy lifting. I know Ivor Hamilton. Is he a part of this?
Yes, he is.
He's a good egg. And you mentioned Scott Turner. So has any talent said politely or not so politely declined?
A few have, simply because they don't remember the era and they don't think that they can offer anything of substance.
Well, if you can remember the era, you weren't there.
Well, that's it. It's funny. We talk to some people and they go, you know what? It was pretty fuzzy back then. There were a lot of drugs.
Now, there's a gentleman who would be, of course, you desperately would want to speak to for this documentary, but I encountered something similar that you're encountering right now, where I was, trying to get Chris Shepard on Toronto Mic'd. I know in 2016, that's going back now, what is that? Someone do the math, 7 years? It's a while ago. But Chris Shepard did maybe it was 2014, made an appearance on Humble and Fred's show. And then I haven't found any evidence of him making a public appearance since. And I had people like Ivor Hamilton and Scott Turner and a bunch of other people who were friendly with Chris Shepard trying to find him, even for him to say no. Like, I'd be fine. Okay, no, thank you. That's fine. I couldn't find him. I did a podcast about this on Toronto Mic. I blogged about this. Have you had any success in locating Chris Shepard for this documentary?
None. We've narrowed him down to someplace in Central America, maybe Costa Rica.
I've heard that one too.
That would make sense for Chris.
It would.
That honestly would make sense.
So the doc should just be finding Chris Shepard, and you fly to Costa Rica and ask the locals about him.
Well, that may be the second doc, as a matter of fact. Yeah,
that's a documentary.
That'll be the one that comes between the Edge doc and the CFNY doc, because it actually is the nice transition piece between the two.
It would be.
Right. Oh, that Edge doc will be interesting too.
The weird thing now, here's the thing: how many people know that the name The Edge is 30 years this year?
That's true.
It
was January 1993.
That's right.
And is this was an American brand that they didn't have the copyright in Canada? Is that the story?
I think so, but
there would have been The Edge out of Dallas. Would have been.
Okay.
Yeah.
The only one I could think of.
And something about
the J-Core stations out of the U.S.
Yes,
had trademarked the Edge for the U.S., but I don't think they trademarked it for Canada.
Amazing.
Because they didn't think about us.
Why? We're in the attic of North America. One of dozens of people, literally dozens of people who live outside the U.S.
Right, exactly. So we're going to dive deep into the ongoing history of new music. So this turning 30. And, because
that was all part of the rebrand, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was
CFNY 102.1, The Leading Edge.
And at exactly the same time we started doing that, Ongoing History shows up on Sunday nights.
That's right.
Now I have old tapes of Freddie P with Scott Turner and some with Humble and Fred from the early 90s where it's modern rock.
That would have been the transition point between the Spirit of Radio and the Edge.
Yeah.
So Spirit of Radio becomes modern rock, and then that transition.
Well, there was always this thing about what to call the music the station played. And this goes all the way back to the late 70s. Nobody wanted to use the word alternative for the longest time, for decades. So it was modern music. That was with David Marsden. It was modern rock. It was Dare to Be Different.
Yeah.
It was, the spirit of radio. And then in January 1993, it was the transition. So it was CFNY 102.1, the leading edge.
With the triangle business cards.
With the triangle business cards that did not fit in anybody's wallet.
And that's when the colors were the purple, the black, the white.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it became CFNY. No, it became...
The leading edge. We dropped the CFNY.
CFNY was 102.1, the leading edge, and then just 102.1, the edge.
Yes.
And then at one point for a while, it was Edge 102.
It was, because that one implanted in my brain.
Yeah, I
as
know.
Robbie J knows.
But there are still people of a certain age. Oh, yeah, you CFNY.
Yeah.
With the state, 30 years of the edge, and people insist.
Twice the length of this of Spirit of Radio.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah, well, legally, technically, still CFNY, right? Like,
let's call it. Yeah.
Once an hour, you hear that.
You got it, yeah. Okay, so we're going to get back to ongoing history and new music, but I'm going to read a note that was posted on LinkedIn this past week, okay? And then at the end of the note, I'll tell you who wrote it. You might already know, and then we can just discuss. But here is, I can't do his voice, but I'll just read it here. Well, folks, I can't even say the word folks. How am I going to read this letter? Well, folks, after trying again, today is finally the day I have been secretly telling myself for a long time that radio is in my past and no longer in my future. Unfortunately, I was given another, we're leaning in a different direction. With that, it's time to move on. I'm good with that. No hard feelings. Being fortunate enough to have 26 fun and fantastic years and 4 horrible ones in the business was an incredible ride. Thanks to Ivor Hamilton, the late Don Burns, the late Reiner Schwartz, Jeff Woods, and Chris Duncombe for allowing me to work in both Toronto and Vancouver. Thanks to all the incredible staff at both CFNY and CFOX who challenged me to be a better broadcaster. Thanks to Alan Cross for letting a kid drop into 83 Kennedy Road South and realize his dreams could become a reality. It was also Alan who always said, as a broadcaster, you have a time stamp on your forehead from day one. I hope any young broadcasters who are reading realize this and have a plan B ready. Chances are you'll need it at some point. If you're ever in the neighborhood, stop by and say hello, and we'll shoot the shit about the great times we had and what lies ahead in the future. Just don't ask me if I heard what they said on the radio. Cheers. Anybody know who wrote that?
Neil Morrison.
Neil Morrison, a.k.a.
Brother Bill.
Brother Bill. Any thoughts on that? I was kind of sad to hear he's done.
That's a very good run. Nobody gets in this business to be in it for 27 years or however long it was. It is unfortunate. This is one of those businesses where there is a lot of staff churn. It's always been that way. And unless you get extraordinarily, stupidly lucky, like me, there is that timestamp on your forehead, that best before date.
Unless you're Marilyn Dennis.
Well, there's a few of us. Marilyn, me. I mean, I'm in year 41 of radio. So no, I'm year 42. Sorry.
42. The answer to all of Universe's questions. Now, Robbie J. What did you think reading, or I don't know if you saw that before, but reading that note from Neil Morrison, a.k.a. Brother Bill, because you're a man who literally left the industry and then they kind of sucked you back to a podcast channel.
I didn't leave. Well, yes.
Okay, well, you tell us now. Like, I mean,
so,
you were...
Yeah, no, I mean, Neil and I, Brother Bill, we've been in contact many times over the last number of years, and he's, reached out and asked about, people and whatnot, and I think... Yeah, it was a hard thing to accept that this day would eventually come, but I think I know Neil well enough to know that if he's made this decision, he's made it because he's comfortable and he's confident and it's the right thing to do. And he's given it a hell of a kick at the can and he's tried different angles and he's probably very content with it and he's living in his place in White Rock and enjoying looking up in the morning and seeing the Pacific Ocean. And
but did you reach the same point when you were working for the post office?
Here's the thing. Neil Mann had a really good quote once where he said, I love radio, but I'm not sure radio loves me. Because Neil had gone through a number of jobs in different PD positions and got, moved out a few times, unfortunately. And he's a great guy too. And I thought, geez, that's a really interesting point because in 2015, when they paid me not to come to work, which was really odd, yet I could kind of see it happening at some point in time. it was like, okay, do I want to stay in this or not? And then you get this opportunity to try different things and see where you want to go. And, full credit to Alan, because when I was cut, he said to Chris Sizem, okay, well, here's the thing. I need Rob to keep doing the ongoing history. So you need to figure out a way for us to compensate him, because he does things and I don't even have to think about it.
I mean, when was the last time we saw each other in person?
We
don't have to.
Yeah,
Oh, no.
yeah.
No, it's all either Zoom or through email.
Well,
or
how
through
long has it
Dropbox.
been?
How long has it been? No, actually December, I think.
Well, yeah, but before December?
Oh, God, I couldn't tell you.
It's been a couple of years.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I
Yeah.
just take for granted that periodically you guys have face-to-face, but why? You don't have to. And
No, we're
we
like-
already
no.
established
We're
how
an old
difficult
married
it is.
couple.
Well, I would tell you a funny thing. So
Right.
when Alan left to go to Y95 back in whenever that was,
2001
or 2 or something, we were like, oh my God, how are we going to do the show? And then he said, well, I'll come in every couple of weeks and we'll knock off a few episodes. And then after that, it became, I can just do this at home. And then it became, I'll just post it to Dropbox. Then it became, I don't have to see you anymore.
Yeah. this idea of us having to be in one place at a given time to record this, really? How old-fashioned and quaint.
So to get back to your question, yeah, I mean, I guess, and I did some stuff with some people over after that, with Doug and the crew in Rock 90 out in Oshawa, and I did, I just didn't really have that passion for it, and it was changing. The whole business was changing, and then I thought, I kind of had my foot in the podcast door, anyways, doing various things in different projects and new media projects, and there you go.
And Bob's your uncle. They pulled you back in like Godfather 3 there.
That's what my nephew says.
The problem is that once you get into radio, and a lot of people will tell you this, is that you will be a radio person for the rest of your life, whether you're working in the industry or not. Yeah. It sounds cliched and goofy and stereotypical, but it's true.
And I will say a thing. I mean, the Edge, I'm an Edge guy. I'm not really a Spirit or radio guy because I came in during the modern rock time. But I'm a CFNY person through and through, and it's within my DNA. I can comfortably say, I still, it is the place I'm most passionate about, I suppose.
Now let's go and do the ongoing history of new music here. So we established Alan Cross is the original host of this program, which is about, what is the exact birthday that it turns 30?
February 28th.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is it now? February 1st. Okay, we're in the month that
Yeah.
Ongoing History of New Music turns 30. But as we'll walk through this, we'll learn it wasn't exactly a straight line here. But okay. So who is the original technical producer for this program? Because it's not you, right, Robbie J?
No, it's Craig Venn.
Yeah.
Craig Venn was...
FOTM.
FOTM Craig Venn, Mr. Cross?
Pardon me?
FOTM Craig Venn?
Trying to.
Oh, I see.
Educate
Okay.
him,
Sorry.
come on.
Sorry.
All right. Craig Venn.
Yeah. So when the show was started, one of the first things I sort of sputtered out was, I can't do the technical production because I just don't have the chops. I need somebody to help operate this.
Right.
And then, okay. Venn, take Venn. So we worked well together for the first 110 shows, and then he moved on to do something else. And now what? Oh, him. Okay. Rob was always hanging around as an operator, and he was trying to convince the head of production at the time that I could do your job. I could do production. I could do. And they went, no, you're just a kid. You can't do it. You can't do it. No. And then one day, all of a sudden, Rob's in production.
Friday the 13th, January 1995. It's the only Friday the 13th I ever remember. Jim McCordy leaves a note in my bunk, and he says, I was going in to do some production, ops some shows at night, and he says, so Craig's leaving to go produce the morning show with Derringer up at the Fan, and I need someone to come in, and I know you're interested in this, so I'll give you a shot. And with that came the ongoing history. And I thought in the back of my mind, Alan's going to go, oh, great, this guy? Oh, great, here we go. The guy who started off answering my phones during the nooner or whatever. Yeah.
Frankly, I didn't care. What I wanted was somebody
get the show done.
You got to get it done.
So how do you give me the nuts and bolts of, especially going back then and then how it evolved? But Alan, do you just say, here's some raw thing I recorded,
No.
go clean this up,
Well,
and add music? Like, how does that work?
You run through your part.
Okay,
first.
so there
How
is
does the script come about back then?
there is an established routine.
Okay.
But it has evolved over many years so that it is a well-oiled machine. So the way it works is that I, over a period of time, collect information about a certain topic in a folder, in a series of folders on my computer. When I have enough material, I have enough to write a show. it takes me anywhere from 5 to 10 hours to write it and voice it. And then what I do then is upload it to Dropbox. I record it in my home studio, upload the raw audio and the script to Dropbox, and then...
Well, then the easy part comes into play. I'll get to that part, but here's what happened in the beginning. So
In the beginning.
in the beginning.
As the Bible says.
Let me take you back to the analog days. So Alan would probably scrounge through newspapers and
It was
Microfiche.
microfiche and archaic websites and CompuServe.
When we started in 1993, there was no internet. There were no books on alternative music. There were no biographies on alternative bands, almost none.
Yeah.
So it was like newspapers, press releases, magazine articles.
Right.
You scrounging. I remember sitting down with a yellow pad at my house up near Orangeville to write the first show. And I still remember looking at this blank pad saying, what the hell what am I going to do? And it was just a horrible, helpless feeling that you had to push through. Again, for music, we would have to scrounge through used record stores. We would have to go to record shows. We'd have to order stuff on these hideous imports for like $40. Whenever I went on vacation, I go to a record store looking for, compilations with music that we could use in the show. I mean, it was incredibly...
Napster was our best friend. I will just say
after
that.
a while, it was. Yeah. And then iTunes, God, if iTunes ever stops selling music, we're doomed.
So Alan would, at 6 o'clock on a Wednesday, Alan would finish his show up at Kennedy Road, and he'd wander a couple doors down to the production side, and we would record the voice track for the dailies, the 5 or 7 dailies.
We did 7 at that time.
7 ongoing history dailies, and the full full hour radio show, which was about a half hour voice track. That would be recorded on a 2-track analog tape. The 2-track analog tape, I would then play back and edit out all the error.
So I'm assuming, Alan, you'd read your script, and if you blew a line, you just repeat that line again.
So I go back, I edit that all out.
The first one, right?
I take that all out so that would come down to a 2-track, and then that 2-track would be laid down onto an 8-track multi-track tape. And on the 8-track, I would lay in Alan's voice track plus the music into that. All of this is in real time. Keep in mind, so half an hour for his recording, about double that to edit it. Another half hour to load it onto another couple hours to load on the multi-track.
Wow.
Then you would mix it down to 2-track and a DAT master. Then you would take the 2-track and put it in the record. So by the time I finished an episode, I had heard it 4 to 5 times at that point in time.
It was onerous.
Yeah.
Those were the good old days.
Those were the good old days.
So obviously along the way, as we get 30 years down the road, a lot of technical advancements have changed
now
the way it is. But what was the biggest jump? Like, how I always think of a computing, because I remember the day that I had Windows 95, and it felt like, okay, Windows 95 was the biggest jump to me.
This was the biggest jump.
Which is what?
Pro Tools and editing on not just that version of Pro Tools. When I could get onto the version where I could render the show and I didn't have to master it in full time, I could just render the segments down. So a 20-minute segment I could render down in about a minute and a half. Right. So I didn't have to fully listen to the show all the way through. And I was thinking the other day when I was cutting the podcast version, I thought, my God, how arduous would this be if we were still in kind of archaic analog time? So now, as Alan said, he puts it to Dropbox. I grab my thousands of MP3 files that we've accumulated over time. I put those in. I could be sitting on the dock up north in the summer. Not that we do shows, but you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter where a show
anywhere
can be
with a good internet connection.
I've edited the show, on a flight back from Edmonton, editing stuff like that. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That right there, the revolution of the digital and the Dropbox and the movement of content has just been a lifesaver.
Unbelievable. I mean, I've done shows in airport lounges, hotel rooms, and you'd never know.
Yeah.
What's the biggest mistake that made it to air?
Oh, there's one that still has to be edited out. I talk about Eddie Vedder playing the guitar solo in Thriller.
Oh,
what episode was that?
I can't remember.
I don't remember that.
Yeah,
that's
instead
great.
of Eddie Van Halen, I said Eddie
Oh,
Vedder. Every
okay.
time, there's been a couple like that.
Well, that's a mind blow right there.
Well, again, it's a brain fart for both of us.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
we're hearing so much audio. Something goes by. Usually, Rob catches it.
Sure, but I could see that one slipping by.
Oh yeah.
There's
been a few others.
Yeah.
Where you get a email immediately. We have never, ever,
knock on wood,
promised to be experts
Yeah.
Right.
You know, we're just music geeks who really love this and love the storytelling aspect of it. We've never, we're not the final word on anything. We try to be accurate.
Do you consider yourself, Alan Cross, a musicologist?
Other people use that term. Me, I'm just a music fan telling stories. I would
you
rather
don't
be known
use
as a
that term.
storyteller. No.
Okay, this came up on Toronto Mike recently when Mike Daly was here, because Mike Daly is Dr. Mike Daly with a PhD in musicologist. And he expressed a little bit of, he doesn't want it used by people who don't have the PhD designation.
I understand that. I don't think I've ever referred to myself as that. I'm just a
Okay, well, you can't
a
stop
music
people.
historian. There's one.
Yep.
Absolutely. Okay, just curious about that one. Now, in a moment, so you mentioned the podcast version, Robbie J. So obviously, forever, this was a terrestrial radio program that it went over the air. And at some point, you said, hey, let's repurpose this and use this as a podcast.
Oh, listen, we were pushing this for years.
Yeah.
Years. But no.
So was I, by the way.
Well, the thing is, it's an original podcast. It's the original idea because it comes back from those old days of documentary radio, which were the beginning of radio, right? And I think our biggest struggle is figuring out, A, where do we put it? B, who's hosting it? And C, like hosting it platform-wise. And C, how are we going to do this with the music? Because we can't run the music. So honestly, we are running extremely close to the sun, even the way we do it by putting in the 15-second hooks.
May I add a little seasoning to that topic right there, okay? Because I produce a show for Peter Gross called, by the way, Peter Gross used to work at CFNY.
Yes, he did.
Let's get him on the interview list. That'd be great. He tells me when he was let go, he wasn't there very long, his severance check, which was like only for, I don't know, a couple weeks pay or something, was delivered by Billy Van.
What?
Yeah, this is...
What, like Hilarious House of Frankenstein, Billy Van?
The Billy Van, yeah, I guess he had a side gig as like a delivery guy, and he delivered the severance check.
That is weird.
Yeah. But, Canadian showbiz and all that. Okay, so Peter Gross used I think he used about 25 seconds of a Rolling Stones song in one of his episodes about horse racing. This podcast is called Down the Stretch. It's about Ontario horse racing. And just this week, because I'm the email attached to the podcast, because I help him and I produce it, I got the email from Spotify that we all dread that just says basically, here are your options. You're using this. If you have the license, then click this box and tell us that, whatever you've licensed it. If you haven't, click this box to say you're going to replace it or whatever. And I don't know how I don't get one of these every single day. And I don't know how they haven't deplatformed me yet, because I know what I do and I violate these rules all the time. So does this worry you guys? Like one day you'll just wake up with the email that says you're being deplatformed by Spotify? Because Spotify seems to be the only podcast aggregator that seems to have beef with this at this time.
Oh, if you were to post these on YouTube, it would happen the same way.
No, I mean podcast aggregators. Okay. Yeah, YouTube would.
Well, I read a stat somewhere, 15 to 17% of all podcasts contain clips of music.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
And I think the issue is that there is no body anywhere in the world where you can go and license music for a podcast. It does not exist. And I could go into why and how difficult that would be. But right now, the music industry is turning a bit of a blind eye unless you're using, full versions of songs and so on. So we're part of a corporate entity, and we want to play nice. So this is what we've determined we can do.
And what is that? What is it, Robbie J? How much of a song will you play?
10, 12, 15 seconds of a hook. I mean, the thing is this, okay? We've been very upfront with the bands and the music labels from the very beginning, right? About what we're doing. And the thing about the ongoing history is, and I've had people ask me this before, because I will often edit out a song. I'll edit it down to 2.5 minutes, right? We don't really need to hear the last 2.5 minutes of Smells Like Teen Spirit. I think we know where we're going. The ongoing history isn't about the music. It's about the stories that lead into the music. So by putting in a 15, 20-second hook, it kind of gets the point across and we're referring to something.
But Ellen, I think you were about to say this, but this is a guess from you guys, right? Like you're just guessing.
Oh, we're just guessing.
Completely.
We have no answer.
No.
No one. Technically, you can't play 5 seconds of a.
Technically, no.
You can't play anything.
Right.
You can't play a second. So we're up to episode. I think today was 275 went out. So I mean,
the
of
podcast.
of the thousand, no, and I'll probably answer a question here that somebody's asked, like, why aren't all the shows up there? And I'll be honest with you,
Right.
because a lot of them suck.
Yeah.
They suck in the aspect that the quality is just bad.
Like the fidelity, the actual
fidelity,
right.
and it's
The
dated. It's
fidelity-
dated content.
Yeah, the storytelling, the writing. I mean, you get better as you go along, and some of those early shows are pretty crap and pretty embarrassing. To be honest with you.
And you know, we get to the point where, like, I would love to run an episode about, you know, I'd love to go back in the vault and run an old episode on Soundgarden. Well, it's kind of hard to do that now because of the things that have transpired.
Oh no!
Or any band like that.
The
You know?
patches, as we might call it in the software world, that
Yeah,
would be
yeah.
required, and then it would sound different. You might as well just do the whole
No,
thing
you,
again.
you do. I've
Yeah.
got a Chris Cornell show coming up before the summer break.
Yeah. So I mean, if I was to look at the list here of the ongoing history shows, there's probably, of the 975 we've done, there's probably 20 on Pearl Jam, probably 15 on Soundgarden. You know,
Yeah, how many on Nirvana, right?
Well,
Yeah.
exactly,
Exactly.
right? You know, so over time, they come and they go. So when we get requests for older versions as podcasts,
Yeah.
we try to accommodate it as best we can. But the challenge is the content might not work
It
because not everybody knows this was a radio show. That's the irony.
Yeah.
You know,
They
the
think
ra-
it's stuff that's coming up brand new every week, and it's not.
the radio show now is a compendium to the podcast.
Interesting. So, because you know, I've been listening since day one to this ongoing history of new music. I love it, and I also subscribe to the podcast, and I thoroughly enjoy that as well. I love it when it's like a current episode, and I'll hear Alan say, "Follow us on Google Play," or not Google Play. What is it? Google. What was it called? Plus.
Google Plus.
Google Plus.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, the good old days. Google Plus was going to replace Facebook. That was going to be great. Okay, so what is other than the fact the songs get shorter, is there any other, is it like, what is the practice involved in taking a radio episode and making it a podcast? Anything else there, Robbie?
Oh, well, so I mean, what I do is, you know, I just basically save a different version of it, and I just go and edit it down. It's you know, it takes me maybe 20 minutes to do the podcast version because I do the full length version first, and then I just telescope it down. Nothing script wise gets removed. The only thing that may get taken out is music. But sometimes, I will say this, sometimes things that don't appear in the radio show appear in the podcast, because on the radio show, we've only got 52 minutes of time to work with. So there could be a really good story in a song, and I'll email Alan and say, oh, by the way, in order to make this work, I'm going to kill this, but we'll throw it back into the podcast version.
Very interesting. So the only incentive for actually tuning into the radio version is the full version of the song.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that you can tune in on when you're driving.
Oh,
or
well, of
whatever.
course, if
yeah,
you
I mean,
haven't figured
it's
out
one
your
of the
Bluetooth yet.
few, appointment listening radio programs left.
When does it air?
7:00 Sundays on the Edge, and then there are about a dozen affiliates from Victoria to Halifax, and they air it at various times over the weekend.
Okay, I'm going to get to a question from Stuart Bailey about metadata, which I'm always interested in. But first, I want to we have to talk about some gaps here. Okay, so Alan, you haven't always worked for the company that owns CFNY.
No, there was a time in 2011 when they decided that I needed to see other people.
691 and out is what we said. That was the last episode.
Yeah. We got Gaz Whalen, the drummer from the Happy Mondays, to give us a couple of shows on the history of Manchester music. And then, poof, that was it for me for 3 years. And I walked around in the wilderness doing a variety of other things, including joining up with Indie 88. This is an interesting piece of trivia. The first voice that you heard on Indie 88 was me.
In the meantime, we partnered up, though, with our friends up at Orbit, with Leslie Soldat, Heather Edwards, John Marie Heimrath, and we took and created The Secret History of Rock, which was basically ongoing histories reworked into a 2-hour show.
And we did 100 of those.
So we've theoretically done 1,000 episodes.
Yeah.
Already, yeah.
So those don't fall under the... Okay, because to remind our listenership, Chorus owns Ongoing History of New Music.
Correct.
So you can go do a music documentary show. You just can't call it that. And
That's
you can,
right.
I guess you can't
Yeah,
use the,
I mean, it would be... we could, but I mean, what would be the point?
Well, I don't know, because I was in the room when somebody at Chorus asked Humble and Fred for $5,000 so they could transfer the name Humble and Fred to them when they started their podcast.
These are legal. It's intellectual property, and whoever has something trademarked, whoever has something copyrighted, that's theirs.
I think, in 2011, there was an internal conversation that we'll just continue on with the ongoing history. And Bookie did some dailies with the ongoing history. And I never got into the whole mix of this. I just remember saying, guys, I don't think this is going to work because I don't think you understand what goes into this.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating to me to think that they could just swap out Alan Cross for, I'll make it up.
Well, they tried.
Jeff Woods.
They tried.
There was also some idea of holding a contest to find a new host.
But it's not but they didn't understand. It's not the hosting part. That's the easy part.
Yeah.
But in 2011, at least like Wikipedia exists. Like there's all these different online
it's not the same,
resources.
though.
No, I know it's not the same, but for a reasonable facsimile. But still, I think it's the cadence and the tone of Alan's voice that's so connected to this program. Like I think it would be widely rejected by the listenership.
It would be kind of like, oh gosh, I mean, there was Casey Kasem doing American Top 40. It took a long time for people to get rid of him and think about Ryan Seacrest.
Ryan Seacrest, yeah. What does Shadow Stevens do? Did he do something in the?
I think he did, or he
yeah.
did. There were two competing top 40 shows, and I
Right.
think he was on the competition.
This we'll call it like Kirkland brand ongoing history of new music. Okay, what was it called again? The Secret History of Rock.
Yes,
What?
Secret
Okay,
History
Secret History of Rock. That's the one that was. You would hear it on Boom 97.3 and
Yes.
CFRB.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so 100 episodes of those.
Yep.
Eh?
2 hours each.
Yep.
So remind me, of course, on Toronto Mike here, we were very interested when Indie 88 showed up, and you were, I think your title was guidance counselor. What was
Yes. I was that's right. I was the guidance counselor. No, I was a paid consultant.
Sure, I know. I like that title, guidance counselor. Little. So, Indie 88, you're there for that period of time. In fact, we've talked many, many times, Alan, on this program in the past, but you're a big reason that the aforementioned Dave Bookman ended up on 88.1.
Yes. When he was let go by The Edge, I said he is the number one indie guy in the city. You would be a fool not to hire him. And it took a little convincing, but eventually that's where he ended up.
And all this time, of course, you can't use Robbie J for Secret History.
No,
What?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay. Oh,
What? Who?
okay. So that's interesting. But in 2011, you're still at Chorus, right, Robbie?
Yeah.
Okay. So you would just freelance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Never appeared. You never heard my name on the show.
No.
Okay. So, okay.
So then Alan
Hold
calls
on
me.
here.
Then Alan calls me in the summer of 2014. He says, "You'll never guess who called me."
The same guy that let me go is bringing me back, and it's like, okay, and I get to dictate the terms. And you ready? Here we go.
Okay, so that's 2014. Okay, but in this from 2011 to 2014, so we were used to hearing. In fact, whenever I think of the name Rob Johnston, I always say technical production by Rob Johnston.
I've instructed my family to put that on my headstone. By the way,
like in that cadence, and it's I think Rob, when your first visit, we played that actually. Alan saying technical production by Rob Johnston, and it's key to remember it's Johnston because many a person has come on this program and talked about Rob Johnson, and I
don't know
like
who he is.
no.
Never worked with him.
No, there's a T in there. But you're secretly doing it, and Alan, out of respect for your livelihood at Chorus, has not dropped the technical production by Rob Johnston.
Yeah, the point is, I couldn't do the program without him.
Yeah.
Honestly. So, yeah,
You
And
are
I-
like a
I-
married couple.
we are.
and I knew all the people at Orbit anyways because I had done some work with them through shows with through Chorus and on album premieres. So we all know each other. So it was just
small
an
world.
easy. It's just easy.
There's no secrets in Toronto radio.
Yeah, and I'll tell you the funniest thing. So
Yeah.
when I was paid not to go to work, I remember one of the first things I thought to myself was, "This is a very small business, and as pissed off and as angry as you may be, just let it go.
Yeah.
Don't make any enemies because you never know what could happen down the road."
Don't burn those bridges.
because they have a really interesting way of coming around and biting you in the ass.
And then let's face it, guys. Outside, although against Indie 88 is a kind of a smaller outfit, but typically, if you're outside of CBC, there's 3 companies owning all these radio stations. Like it's Bell, it's Rogers, and it's Chorus.
And
Stingray.
Stingray.
And Stingray, which has Boom, right?
And if you go west, you got Pattison.
And Patterson, and there's
Okay.
Vista and a
There's
few
some
others.
some others out there. Okay, but you don't want to burn bridges. It's a very small.
Absolutely not, especially since the number of jobs within the industry is shrinking.
Right. And on that note, Alan, I couldn't help but notice you had a 7:00 show in the lineup that seems to have disappeared. What happened to your 7:00 program?
Oh no, it's that was something that was started in 2016 as a placeholder. It was only supposed to last for a little while.
Okay.
But then it ended up lasting almost 1,500 episodes. And we're just about to sign. I'm just about to sign a new contract with Chorus to get me there for another 5 years.
Woo!
So it's an opportunity to reset the table for things going forward. I'm still there. I'll still be doing lots of stuff. It's just I'll be doing different stuff.
Okay, because I did see a Tyler Lynch. This is a CFOX show.
Yeah.
So we now have. I'm kind of curious of your take, and I realize you both get checks from Chorus, and you might want to be careful. But it's up to you what you say. But I find it interesting that here we are in Toronto, this big station, 102.1. What a station, capital. I won't say capital, but the biggest city in the country. That's a fact. And we have from 7 to 10 p.m., we have a CFOX show airing here. Like, that is an interesting sign of the times.
It is, but at the same time, what you want to be able to do is bring the best in radio content to the Toronto listenership, wherever it may come from. And this is they've had a success with them doing this in Winnipeg, and it fills a gap, and it's better than having anything voice tracked.
Mm.
Rob, you're gonna chime in, or you gonna be careful?
It's not my area. It is not my area.
Okay, I like it when our shows are live and local. That's I prefer the radio shows here to be live and local.
It still
although
is
your show can't be live, but obviously.
Yeah, but for the most part, it really is. Mm-hmm. So this is just
syndicated radio has been going on since the beginning of time, since the beginning of radio,
forever. And it's an efficient way to bring high quality programming to stations that otherwise may not have an opportunity for whatever reason. And it could be financial, it could be other reasons. Radio is there's no big secret here, is that it's fighting against the digital world, and you have to find efficiencies.
I'm going to pepper, because I see I got about 20 minutes left and I have a bunch of questions here. So I'm going to pepper you guys with questions. One is about
Sunday night at 7, the ongoing history of new music with Alan Cross.
It's about the music. So we have this bed of music that we've been hearing for 30 years. Where did and I played the stinger off the top, which is like, it's like Pavlov dog. You hear that, you know what you're getting next. But where did the music come from?
You want to handle that, or should I?
I think you know it better than I do, but nobody has a definitive answer. That's the challenge.
Back in late 1992, when the station was about to relaunch as The Edge, management brought in this producer named Amin Bhatia. Amin is extremely accomplished.
He's a mad scientist in the studio.
Totally. And he was the one commissioned to come up with all kinds of new imaging for the radio station, including a theme song for this new program that they had just assigned me. And that's Amin Bhatia's work.
And it's a hybrid of all kinds of sounds and songs and this and that.
Okay, let me do the stinger again here. Hold on.
Yeah. And you got to remember,
it works.
This was built during this combination of analog and digital days. Like,
I don't think we had anything digital back
He
then.
might have.
He might have.
Amin probably did.
Would have had a Pro Tools version 4.
If that.
Wow.
And then he would have had his Moogs and keyboards.
And his guitars.
Yeah.
I'm assuming, I have been told that he was the one that composed the whole thing. So that's original Amin Bhatia material.
I'm so glad I asked. Okay, Stuart Bailey, he says, for your interview of Alan Cross, could you ask him about how he manages his metadata? I've heard him do 1 or 2 episodes on ongoing history of new music where he talks about metadata used to track song plays, charting, or formats, for example, MP3. But given how much he has talked about music, how does he manage it all? I'm a bit of a library nerd, by the way, and thanks for all the shows you do. I think that's me he's thanking, but he's probably also thanking you. All right, Alan, metadata.
Well, there's 2 questions there. The metadata would be the songs that I have, and those are all carefully cataloged.
What do you do with a band like the Tragically Hip? Is it the Tragically Hip, or is it Tragically Hip, the?
The problem, whenever there's a band with a the, I tend to remove the because in the way iTunes, for example, organizes things, they will have all these the bands all together.
Yes.
That is a problem with the database. So in the interests of having everything nicely alphabetical, I dropped the.
What about a perfect circle? That's still A.
That is an
Oh,
A.
yeah.
Definitely an A.
I'm asking you all the questions because I'm a big metadata nerd. With
The
my
way it goes
questions.
is numerical characters first, then alphabet, then symbols.
When I worked at HMV 333 Yonge Street, it was fun when people would come in and look for Led Zeppelin under Z.
In the old days of DOS,
There's a substance there, I think.
in
involved.
the old days of DOS, we would make sure that songs were cataloged properly by putting an underscore between the
That's right.
the words.
Wow.
I mean, I will
to
admit,
link them together.
the library of music is quite the dumpster fire
Oh boy.
because just the way everyone has titled songs over time, right?
But do you ever think to yourself, I'll go to YouTube, get a good YouTube, and just rip that to MP3 or whatever.
You know what I will do? I will use a program that I have called Audio Hijack,
I have that too.
and I will play a version off of Apple or Spotify, and I will play it as an AIFF file.
See, these are the hacks. I love it. Retro Dave wants me to say, he goes, "Hey, Mike, looking forward to hearing your upcoming podcast with Alan Cross and Robbie J. Retro J. I got Robbie J in the house. Can you please ask him if he has an update on the Martin Streak documentary that was announced a few years back?"
I just got an email yesterday.
Oh.
So this would be January 31st. I got the email from Will Dunlop,
Yeah,
who was the
that's
guy
the guy.
doing it.
Right.
And he asked me when I would be ready to appear for an interview.
Now there is a little bit of a hurry up and wait thing going on there because I feel like I hope this is finally happening, but maybe the pandemic and stuff interfered.
I believe so. I did an interview with Will last summer, and I think he was at that point. It was post pandemic, getting things back on the track, on the rails. Everything was moving forward because it became a lot easier.
Oh, I guess I don't know the legalities of the documentary world, but you're doing the CFNY doc, so you had to get I'm always curious, why did you have to get Chorus's permission?
It's their intellectual property.
But you can do. I mean, you can do. I could do a documentary about Coke versus Pepsi, and the Cola Wars, and I don't need to get sign off from Pepsi and Coke.
Well, we just want to cover our bases so that nobody comes after us.
Will
And
Will have to do that? I guess I'm wondering.
I honestly don't know.
Although it is about Martin Streak, not necessarily about the station. Okay. 2014, you mentioned you got the call to come back, Alan. So the same person who said we need to see other people back in 2011, in 2014 said, Alan, would you come back? At that time, you're at Indy 88. Was there ever did you have a moment of hesitation?
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
going to ride this out?
This was another one of those pivotal career moments. You have to make the right decision. So I spent some time thinking about it, talking to my wife over it. And in the end, it was like, I can't remember who somebody said, look at, who are you kidding? This is where you belong.
That wasn't me, by the way.
No, I don't think it was.
It sounds like Robbie J was saying that.
But somebody said, you've been there for so long. Well, why wouldn't you go back if they want you back? So, okay. And that has been a dozen years ago.
So the ongoing history of new music, not the secret history of rock, the ongoing history of new music, it was dormant essentially
Yeah.
for that period of time.
It
Okay.
did not get any. It just went away.
So no Jeff Woods or
No.
Dave Bookman.
Well,
okay.
Woods was doing the Legends of Classic Rock,
Which was basically for
The Q version.
Yeah, for Tom Petty instead of
which
Anthony Kiedis.
which needed to happen.
Right. Okay, cool. Now, there's a gentleman named Karim Mosna, hope I'm pronouncing that right, who wrote in, "Hi, Toronto Mike. I've followed your podcast and blog for years, and I see you have Alan Cross and Rob Johnston coming on the program tomorrow, and that you are inviting questions for the show. I wanted to ask Alan about when crafting ongoing history on any on-air shows, are you always communicating to a music aficionado, or are you also keeping in mind those who may not be really into the music as well? Can this be challenging? As well, I'm curious to learn more about Rob's role. We're kind of doing that now, but what does being the technical producer of ongoing history entail? Thank you, Karim."
The answer is, it's all about a good story.
Yes.
And you can't get too nerdy about it, because you'll end up excluding people, and they'll feel like, oh God, I don't understand. They're talking above my head. I feel left out. So I've always maintained that the stories have to be, wherever possible, accessible to anybody who is interested in a good story. The biggest compliment the program can get is, I didn't even think I didn't think I would enjoy this particular topic, but I got so sucked into the stories that I sat in my driveway waiting for the show to end so I could see how things worked out.
And sometimes we don't know what's going to hit. I'll
Not
tell you
a
a story.
chance.
So we've done we've done a series of shows called The Kings of Quirk, stuff like this, like just bizarre music, right? And I guess it was December. I was putting a re-roll podcast in because we sometimes do some re-roll ongoing histories, and I have to when I put the okay, let me backtrack here. The podcast version that goes out is the version of the show from the preceding weekend. Okay. So today's version, the one that dropped this morning, is Connections, which is the one married to the show that aired last Sunday. So what happens is every once in a while we'll have to fill a gap, and I'll put a gap in. So I put a show on called the Quirky Music, I think it was. I can't remember the exact. Outsider Music.
Right.
Outsider Music. And the response we got email-wise was overwhelming.
It is the most listener-unfriendly music ever recorded.
Yes, I listened to this. Yes.
And
yes.
Please, more.
Yeah. So you could do a dozen shows on Eddie Vedder.
Right.
But you do a show on this.
Yeah.
And it's like, so and honestly, that's the brilliance about it.
You have no idea what is going to resonate. What you think is going to be a home run falls flat.
Right.
But then you look at the downloads for the songs, for the programs that you thought, this is okay. Let's face it, I'm grasping at straws this week, and then boom, it goes nuts.
You mentioned the Connections episode, which I listened to actually. It's interesting to hear you, Alan, talk about how that show, which was that was an amazing show, Connections, and that that inspired
James
your James Burke, your style on ongoing history music was inspired.
A lot of it, yeah. I mean, I was such a big James Burke Connections fan because I just loved how he wove together all these seemingly separate things into a
common thread.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
It is brilliant. Okay, I'm really going rapid fire now. Alan, who else besides yourself, and if there's anyone else besides yourself, is tweeting from @AlanCross? Because I've noticed that it's like it feels to me like maybe you've got a team there.
No.
Is it all just you?
No, there's no one.
Wow.
There's me and Rob. That's it.
I don't even have a
There used to be. I used to have some help with some tweets, but that's long gone.
All right. Well, this is high praise for you then that you're doing all that yourself.
No,
'cause
I
it's
am.
a lot of activity there, but you're.
And by the way,
passionate.
you are in this room. You have the entire staff
Yeah.
of ongoing history. There is no one else.
Gonna get to that. Okay. So so if anything happens to us now, that's it for ongoing history.
That's it.
Music.
Bomb goes off in this room. It's over.
So speaking of things that hopefully never happen, I'm going to say this, hoping it doesn't happen, but let's say Anthony Kiedis dies today, okay? Tragically. Terrible. What does that, for you, Alan, what exactly would happen to the rest of your day with Anthony Kiedis dying?
Well,
today?
it would collapse. Everything would be called off. I would end up doing TV and radio shows. I am obituary man.
Yeah.
Whenever anyone in the music world dies, I immediately started getting phone calls.
And
and
Eric
emails.
Alper are the two guys.
Yeah.
Okay, can I talk about Eric for a moment? What are your thoughts on Eric Alper? Because you're right, I see him all the time now popping up when someone dies.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the more there's no hey, get off my turf, Alper.
No.
So-
If they call me, I'm available. Okay, fine. If they may call him, and they may if he's not. It doesn't. I don't care.
Well, you're both sweethearts. So
Well,
it's,
Alan will
not
spend the
surprising.
next 48 hours doing stuff about Anthony Kiedis.
Right.
But what we'll do for the ongoing history is we're not going to rush out a show. We'll step back and we'll look at it and go, is this a 1, a 2, or a 3-parter? And then maybe a month later, 3 weeks later, we'll slip in the 1 or the 2, because we have a theory that our schedule is set pending asterisks.
Yeah.
And the asterisks are usually, unfortunately,
People dying.
Yes. Right, because I was thinking of Chris. You mentioned Chris Cornell earlier, and I think he's up for. I think he's nominated for the Hall of Fame or something like that. Might have been
Soundgarden
announced
was
today.
nominated for
Soundgarden.
the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
So will that that's not a death, but will that spiral Alan Cross as a talking head talking about?
No, right now what we'll do is if a big alternative act dies, we will immediately
or calls it quits.
We'll do something. I have a whole bunch of pre-written, voiced obituaries that will run on Q107, because I'm the imaging voice of Q107.
Yes, sorry, we should mention that. Yeah.
And so I've got about 75 obituaries, ready. Mick, Keefe.
It's the oldest trick in broadcasting.
Just so you have something on right away. So and newspapers have obituaries, like the Hazel McCallion obituary had been written for about 25 years.
I was talking to my neighbor recently back in the fall, and she works for one of the newspapers, and they had been working on a Queen Elizabeth for years. Updating it all the time.
Yeah. So, the problem now is that we have so many rock stars that are in their 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And they are going to be shuffling off this mortal coil over the next 5 years. It's going to be a mass extinction event. And at some point in the next 5 to 7 to 10 years, we are going to live in a world where there is no living Beatle. And, there's no Bob Dylan. There's no Mick and Keith. There's no Jimmy Page. There's no Robert Plant. So that's something that we are probably going to start to deal with Ongoing History podcasts, not for the radio show, but for the podcasts.
Without a doubt. And, I used Anthony Kiedis as the example because that's a big alt-rock superstar.
We would do something, as if we have...
Well, yeah, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say we'll go back to the vault. And we can if it works.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's better to actually take the... Because here's the thing with broadcast. Everybody wants something right away.
Yeah.
And while that's good to do, for the context of a show like The Ongoing History, it needs time and thought.
Yes. You can do if somebody big like that were to die, I think the best way to handle it would be to have the live announcers talk about it and play music. That would be the best way. And then say that, Ongoing History is in production. We are going to do a retrospect on insert name of artist here.
Can you, with the automation software, how much can you break in right away? Like, if Anthony Kiedis dies, you can break into that automation software that's playing the music.
You know what? I don't know.
No idea.
It's not our thing.
I know.
I was just looking here at the schedule. So Bowie died the beginning of January 2016.
Yeah.
We did our episodes the 14th and 21st of February. So a month later.
And what about artists that are like influential, important artists, but aren't names that the average Joe knows, like a Tom Verlaine, for example, from television?
Well, that is going to be... We started handling that this year. I've been trying to put it off, wanting to put it off for so long, but there's no way we can do it anymore. Is that the first show of any calendar year will be an in memoriam show from here on in.
Oh, yeah.
So we did the first in memoriam show for 2022 in January of 2023, and we will continue to do that going forward.
The other way we can do it, and we've done it in the past, there's a series called What's the Big Deal About Blank? So what's the big deal about Tom Verlaine? And what Tom Verlaine would be is the beginning, the nucleus, and then what came from that.
Right. Like here's Pavement, and this is the influence,
exactly.
whatever. Okay, amazing. By the way, I just yesterday dropped the Ridley Funeral Home Memorial episode for January 2023. People we lost, and remember people like David Onley, etc. And I want to shout out Ridley Funeral Home. By the way, if Anthony Kiedis does die in the next couple of days, I'm getting the blame, so I'm hoping he lives a good long time. But shout out to Ridley Funeral Home. You guys enjoy Italian food?
Yes. Oh, there's a Palma near my house.
Palma Pasta has a large lasagna for each of you. You're each getting a large lasagna.
No, their lasagna. Have you tried their lasagna?
I haven't.
Oh, the meat
You
lasagna
didn't get
is.
one. Okay.
I last time I was here was pre-Palma.
Pre-Palma. Okay, I'm glad you're back.
No. No.
Well,
It is-
listen.
It's fantastic.
It is fantastic. Alan's right. And you're not leaving here without one.
Good.
Oh, they actually put meat in their meat pasta.
Lots
of meat.
Delicious Palma pasta. I know, Robbie J, you're a big fan of Great Lakes Brewery.
Indeed.
I think you live near Troy Birch, I want to say, at Great Lakes.
Yeah, I see him I see his vehicle every once in a while. He's north of Bob.
Okay,
But
he's
we're all
north
on
of
the
Bob.
same
Okay,
line. We're
I
all
gotta
just off Woodbine.
map it on my map
Yes,
here.
exactly.
But you got some fresh craft beer from Great Lakes going home with you. Thank you, Great Lakes Brewery. Thank you, Palma Pasta. Thank you, Ridley Funeral Home. Canna Cabana will not be undersold on cannabis or cannabis accessories, and there's over 140 locations across the country. And my final minutes here, Alan Zweig was just here. We were actually saying it was going to be Alan Week because we had Alan Zweig, and now I have Alan Cross. Alan Zweig did a fantastic documentary on vinyl I'm sure, Alan, you've seen that
Yeah.
documentary. Mike Wickham writes in and says, please ask about the CFNY Music Library. If I remember correctly, Alan and Ivor, he says Ivan, but I know it's Ivor. Ivor Hamilton have the bulk of it.
Well, here's what happened. In 1996, the radio station was moving from the strip mall at 83 Kennedy Road South to number 1 Dundas. And at the time, if you remember, vinyl was considered to be evil, awful, horrible, dusty, dirty, moldy stuff. We're getting into the age of the internet. If we need any of this music, well, we'll just find it online. So there was no plan to move all the vinyl from Kennedy Road South to 1 Dundas. They were just going to throw it out.
Wow.
Now, the staff would have none of this. So by this time, we were almost 100%. Well, we were 100% digital.
Yeah, we had
96.
moved over to the DCS system at that
system,
point.
right? So everything was digital, and we had all this vinyl, and they were just going to toss it in the dumpster, and that was going to be it. So the staff started going through grabbing stuff. Did you grab anything?
A few pieces.
Yeah.
I think I got there though after you backed up the U-Haul truck and emptied out the.
I actually rented a Ryder truck,
Wow.
backed it up to the radio station, and took whatever was left, and that's about 7,000.
Did anyone
records.
film that? That's the documentary.
No, no.
That would have been. That's a documentary.
Right
You
there.
know, now you realize now, especially with that Beatles dog from Peter Jackson. Now, like everything is a potential. We should be running a video of everything. 'Cause everything's a potential.
This is before smartphones.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and the funny thing about the ongoing history vault itself lives on DAT at Chorus Key. The first 200 and some shows. Everything, and then it went to CD for about 200 shows, and then everything else lives on my hard drive.
Digital.
Yeah.
It lives in the cloud. Lives on Dropbox.
Lives on Dropbox.
So if by the way, back to those records, if you grew up listening to CFNY between 1977 and 1996, and you wonder where all those records that Chris Shepard and Earl Jive and everybody else played on the radio, they're in my basement.
That's amazing here. How's Mary Ellen Benninger doing?
She's working for the Ontario Energy Board, and she's fine.
She's good. Love the fun fact that Alan Cross married Mary Ellen Benninger.
In fact, if you listen right now, there's a commercial about scams that's on PSA. That's her. She's
Okay.
on the radio. Yeah.
Amazing. And Robbie J sent me the fun fact as we wind down here that when Ongoing History of New Music debuted 30 years ago this month, Bill Clinton had been in office, for just over a month? Is that right?
Yeah.
And Groundhog Day was the top movie.
Yeah, it's bizarre. It's so bizarre. It's such a lifetime ago. I mean, I have to be, the thing is, when the show started, I remember when it started, I thought I would listen to it. And then I got to admit, I was intimidated as hell to take over the production side because I knew the work that went into it and what Craig had done. And Craig spent so much time on it. And the first episodes, and the episodes he did are incredible because of what went into it in the analog days. Right.
Yeah, right.
And, full praise to Craig. And he's the OGT TP, if you will, technical production.
Right.
Learned a lot from Craig. But yeah, this Craig, Alan, myself it's the core.
That's all there's ever been.
Yeah. I will now. Here's a Easter egg for all Ongoing History podcast subscribers.
Yeah.
On the 28th of February, I will drop the first episode as a bonus
That's never
podcast.
been.
It's never
Okay.
been.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
I will
that's
drop
a good
it.
one.
Craig Venn tells me a story where he was editing something for Ted Wallachin and and he didn't quite put the right one on the air.
That's a famous one in CFNY lore.
And as an editor, that is your greatest fear.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like a poster child for like, don't do this. And then the other one, of course, when Martin Streak, I guess he can't go to a concert. I want to say it was Tool. I want to say Nine Inch Nails.
It was Nine Inch Nails.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he drops the big F-bomb with Pete Fowler.
Yeah.
Shout out to... I'm wearing today for the photo. We're going to take it now because Alan has a heart out here. But my Lost Indie City t-shirt here is a tribute to Pete Fowler. And... Pete was on the air with Martin when he dropped that F-bomb.
Jason Barr was producing the Thursday 30 that night. I was coming in to do the overnight, and Jason says, "You'll never guess what happened."
Well, what's amazing is that I have the audio has survived, and I have it.
I think Brother Bill had that.
Shout out to Brother Bill. So happy anniversary, guys! How
you,
long
Mike.
will this show go? What is the plan?
What else are we gonna do? This is, I'm at least another 5 years.
You know what? Honestly, the podcast audience has kept it going. We're getting hundreds of thousands of downloads a month.
How many total downloads? About close to 20 million, right?
Yeah, somewhere in around there.
And
yeah.
this is a program that comes out once a week.
Yeah.
Well, it's a very good program. Otherwise, you wouldn't have so many downloads, and I enjoy it myself. And I think of us as like, even though it's a chorus production, you two are the only members on the team or whatever. Like Toronto Mic'd, Ongoing History of New Music, both part of your daily podcast diet here.
Sure.
So we're all in the
Yes.
same. We're in the same boat here. But thanks so much for doing this. Again, don't leave about the lasagna. Make sure we get the photo before Alan drives away. In his shit box out there. My wife, so Alan was 24 hours early. My wife was working upstairs from home, and she asked me, she goes, whose Porsche was that? It was like, well, Alan was here. He'll be back in 24 hours. And that brings us to the end of our 1,197th show. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Toronto Mike. Alan is at Alan Cross. Robbie is at Robbie. Is it _J? _J. Don't forget the underscore. Our friends at Great Lakes Brewery are at Great Lakes Beer. Palma Pasta is at Palma Pasta. Recycle My Electronics. They're at EPRA_Canada. And if anyone, especially you, Robbie J, you have any old tech that has lived its life and needs to be chucked, don't throw that in the garbage. You go to recyclemyelectronics.ca. Find out where you drop that off so it can be safely recycled. It's really important. There's a lot of chemicals and stuff in there, as you know.
Well, please back a truck up to my house. I've got a whole bunch of stuff for you.
Hey, we'll take care of you. Ridley Funeral Home. They're at Ridley FH. Canna Cabana are at Canna Cabana _. We will see you all Friday when my special guest is Dave Charles.
Because everything is coming out rosy and green. Yeah, the wind